My father lifted his glass at the gathering for my engagement. I thought he may say something about commitment or love, even his level of pride. Rather, he addressed me directly and stated. The crowd froze when someone spoke. "You're not really mine. You'll never inherit a cent." The sound of glasses clinking halted in midair. Conversations stopped in the middle of sentences. The DJ even made mistakes with the music, and there was an unpleasant stillness as the background tune faded. I remained motionless. I didn't recoil. I didn't even put down my own glass of champagne. I simply grinned. The identical smile that I had spent years practicing in front of the mirror, the one that concealed all of my emotions, I stated, letting my voice carry just enough. "Since we're disclosing family secrets," over the startled silence to be heard, "I also have one." At that point, I arrived it into my handbag and extracted a white envelope. My stepmother's flawless smile from the opposite side of the table, the one she slid and looked armor-like. Around the stem of her wine glass, her knuckles turned white. Her gaze strayed to my dad, then back to me while looking and calculating. She was aware of what I was holding. However, I didn't open it. Not quite yet. Now was not the time to blow the whole truth away. No, now was the time to set off the fuse. I sensed that everyone in the room was watching me. Friends, relatives, co-workers at the legal company where my fiancé works. A few leaned forward, curious to hear rumors. Others appeared uneasy, uncertain whether to stay for the spectacle or excuse themselves to use the lavatory. My Daniel, my fiancé, was beside me with a kind touch on my back. He could feel, his fingers tense. Not all the details of the story were yet known to him. However, he was wise enough to trust that I have a motive for doing this. I murmured softly, "Don't worry," letting my lips curl at the edge of a smile. "We will return to dinner shortly, but given that my father has decided to update the family record, I believe it is only right that we all depart this evening with the complete knowledge of the situation." A murmur was heard. The phones began to emerge, people's covert, silent recording methods when they believe they're keeping quiet. In the wine glasses, I saw the dim reflection of red recording lights. I didn't give a damn. Any actually expected it. One may question what kind of person would interrupt her own engagement celebration, wearing a high-end gown beneath crystal chandeliers and fairy lights, hinting at a scandal that might silence a whole banquet hall. The type of individual who has been pushed is the solution to the brink for years. Because my father's harshness wasn't the only thing that happened that night. Approximately a lifetime of being excluded from the family he created without my presence. Richard Hayes, my father, had always been a loving man, control over connection. He had the ability to transform a dinner table into a boardroom by himself. Observing until you discovered that you had just been subjected to a cross-examination during dessert. My mother passed away in a vehicle accident while I was 6. He promptly got married again. Too soon. Caroline was in our group 6 months later, putting my mother's belongings in storage, moving furniture about the house, and grinning despite every forced introduction. Caroline appeared flawless, graceful, and kind to the outer world, the type of woman who could enchant a room with only 3 words and never had a hair out of place. However, behind closed doors, she ensured that I was aware of my precise position. "It's fortunate that your father kept you here." As she flipped through luxury magazines in the living room, she would remark casually, "Most men in his situation would," and my father, "He never defended me and sent you to boarding school." Simply straighten his tie and be silent, as though the hurt of her words could be forgotten. I moved out when I turned 18, obtained a place of my own, and worked 2 jobs to pay for college, I told myself. Although I was free, my father's shadow actually followed me everywhere, as seen by the way people treated me after they learned how Caroline always appeared to know things about my life that she shouldn't have, and how my family was I had been carrying. An envelope for weeks, and that night at my engagement party, I clutched it. It contained the findings of something I had been surreptitiously researching for months, a reality that would completely upend Caroline's meticulously constructed persona turn, my father's perception of the lady he had choose above his own daughter, completely upside down. I wanted that night to be about Daniel and me, so I intended to utilize it during my engagement party. However, when my father chose to publicly humiliate me by claiming that I wasn't his blood or his heir, and he gave me themament that I was unaware I had been anticipating, the room's atmosphere was electric, and I could feel my heartbeat in my, father whispered. Laura, in a quiet voice, but sharp. Store that. Now is not the moment. I cocked my head a little, as Caroline often did when she was going to say something scathing. Oh, I think it's precisely the right moment. The room echoed with gasps. Caroline's hand a fist clenched in her lap after slipping from her wine glass. I didn't open the mail yet. Let's enjoy dinner, I murmured with a charming smile as I slid it back into my clutch. The tension abruptly changed when he said, "We can talk more after dessert." The party went on and people sat down again, talking in quiet, nervous murmurs. However, everyone in the room was aware that something was about to happen, and nobody would escape unharmed when it did. People usually believe betrayals occur in one explosive moment. That one disagreement or error can destroy a relationship. However, in my family, it began as a silent erosion and didn't go that way. When my mother was alive, our house felt cozy, in ways that are impossible to quantify, and she had a way of making even the most mundane days feel special. Handwritten notes in my lunchbox, pancakes for dinner in the rain, and music playing while we cleaned the house together. Everything seemed to have lost its color when she passed away in that vehicle accident. My father, Richard, stood erect, his mouth clenched, and he didn't cry during the funeral. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was surviving by shaking hands with people as if it were a business meeting, shutting everything out before it could affect him. After that, we were alone for 6 months, and dinners were quiet. However, I made an effort to think that we would return to a somewhat regular state. Then Caroline showed there. I initially met her in our kitchen. A stranger wearing a silk blouse was resting against the counter as if she had always been there when I got home from school, belonged there. She was giggling over a comment made by my father. My father said, "Laura," in a tone that would later irritate me like nails on glass. "This is Caroline, a buddy," and it forced me to straighten up. Squat